James.
Big buses, half empty, going into the city centre are old thinking. We need some new thinking. Short-term solution is to use Pembroke, Pete, Ross Butlers. You integrate the bus service with taxis. You use smaller buses which go off on feeder routes from the main route where you get people. It's not that hard, it just needs some money and some planning. That can be done in the short term. That will help Pembroke and it will help most other suburbs. The longer term's a little bit harder. That's where you need to integrate your transport system, but you also need to integrate your service delivery centres so that you have your hospitals, your doctors, your dentists, your shopping areas at a place where buses go to. No point if you want to get from Beltana to Eastlands to have to go into the city and out again. That's silly. So let's just fix the immediate problem of little old ladies being able to get to where they want to shop by using taxis, and then look at the longer term problem, which is actually about having infrastructure that works for the people.
Peter Patmore, your second question for our candidates tonight, please.
Second question. Relatively recently, the Parliament numbers were cut from 19 to 15 in the upper house and 35 to 25 in the lower house. There has been a debate recently in both papers and by some members of Parliament saying that indeed that was a mistake and that it has effectively eliminated the backbench and has made the executive more unaccountable and has also limited the talent pool available to members of Parliament, and it has been stated by some commentators that it was a backwards step. Could I ask the candidates whether they feel that shrinking the members of Parliament was a mistake and whether they would leave the numbers as they were or whether they would support an increase?
John.
Tell you what, it's tough when you get the question and you're always first up because it doesn't give you time to actually grasp the question, because it gives the others plenty of time to start thinking about what they've got to say, and I'm first up and that's it. Thank you.
I'll change it around, John, from the next question. I'll reverse the order so the people in the middle stay in the middle. How's that sound?
One of my concerns is when Parliament was reduced, I, like probably many other people, thought it was a good idea. What frustrated me more was the bureaucrats grew and grew and grew. That's what frustrated me more. And I find it now extremely difficult, and I'm sure other panel members here would. If you want to actually see your parliamentarian, it's extremely difficult. It is extremely difficult. They want to know what day, what time, what are you going to talk about, and 10 other details. Well, heavens above, if I got elected, I'm sure if any of these panel got elected, if we thought we were going to run like that, we wouldn't bother standing. Because to me, that's not what it's about. If people cannot come and see me or anybody else, I think it's a pretty retrograde step. So yes, I'm not quite sure if the answer is to increase Parliament. I blame it a bit on members themselves, because some members make themselves available, some members you never see. I know, without blowing in his pocket, but I know Ross is always about. You can always go and see Ross at any time. And you know, really, I think that's how members of Parliament should be. Not just hidden away, not protected by minders. We should have access to them. And I'm sure that, you know, if any of us are elected, I'm sure we'll do that. So no, I'm not in favour of being increased. I just wish we could get to them and just forget about the minders for a while.
Wendy.
It's Green Party policy to increase the size of Parliament back to what it was, from 25 to 35 in the lower house. I certainly would support that policy. We have the situation at the moment where we've got members of Parliament that have multiple portfolios, and I don't believe they have the time to spend on those portfolios. For example, the Premier has the vital portfolio of education as well as being Premier, and I don't believe he has the time to give to the education portfolio, or else he wouldn't have made the decisions relating to the Polytechnic and the Skills Institute and the Academy. I would certainly support an increase in our elected members. The costs haven't decreased. As John has said, the number of advisors has increased to accommodate the decrease in the number of parliamentarians. So, thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Peter?
Thanks, Mark.
I agree we should increase our lower house to back to 35, keep the upper house at 19, and I think the legislative councillors should all go out together. They should go out when Parliament goes out. So we're not mucking around with all these different elections. We talk about the bureaucrats. Because they're only, the lower house has decreased, we are employing more advisors. The advisors are being paid twice as much as the politicians. That's where a lot of the money's going. In Australia, we have 9 governments. We have 6 states, the ACT, the Northern Territory, and the federal government. Personally, I would like to see the state government go. And we are run by the federal government, and we and the councils administer the works program. We have 6 different licences, 8 different licences, 8 different car registrations, 8 different police forces. We should do something about going along these lines. But getting back to the increasing of the lower house, yes, I do agree it should go back to 35. Leave the upper house as it is. One thing I'm adamant about is the upper house should come back to 4 years, not 6, because you get a councillor up there, he'll sit on his bum for 5 years and come out for 1 year and work pretty hard and get re-elected. 4 years is enough time for a person to be in Parliament. So I agree, back to 35, leave the upper house at 19, 4-year term for the upper house and a 4-year term for the lower house.
Sharon?
Yes, I also support what my fellow candidate has just proposed, and I do believe that politicians should be more accessible, because I have tried very, very hard to meet like my MP, you know. So I think Duncan Kerr was quite good, because it only took me I waited only 1 weekend and I got an appointment to see him, you know. But there are some politicians like Senator Carol Brown. It took me a long time to get to see her. And some people, they keep telling you, if I had to have a word with David Bartlett, I have to speak to his advisor, you know, who keeps his diary. And it's so ridiculous that before he became a premier, I just sat beside him at the dinner, you know. But after he became a premier, it was so difficult for me to get to speak to him, and I just find that pretty atrocious. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. Richard?
Let's not forget that the main reason for the reduction in the numbers in the lower house was the 40% trade-off that occurred at the time. And in the Ray Groom government, under his premiership, that was basically the key factor that was responsible for the reduction in the lower house from then 35 to 25. And that was for the 40%. So if you're going to use some logic here, you would have thought that, okay, for those who are of the view that the numbers should be increased, therefore should not those pollies have a reduction in salary contrary to, and I'm just using basic logic here to even put up that proposal. So getting back to the question, and I won't say Mr. Chairman again, but getting back to the question that's before us, I don't believe we should be increasing the numbers at all. I think that we have sufficient numbers within the lower and the upper house, and the capability, and I don't necessarily mean that we should be having a huge bureaucracy or minders there to be able to undertake those duties of the minister in his or her name. But for the size of Tasmania's population, the number of local councils, a number of federal representatives, and the composition of the numbers in the lower and upper house, I think the numbers are adequate. I think that if you're going to aspire to position within a government, and obviously many who go into politics or get elected into the lower house obviously want to achieve that. But I think that it would be a retrograde step, not only for the democratic process, because this at the time went through that, to turn around now and increase the numbers. I think it would be a sellout to the community, and I don't think it would be in the interests of the Tasmanian community.
Thank you, Richard.